here's one of the things I think is a mistake about local communities. So I think a lot of people, live in, Cedar Falls, Iowa, right? That aren't you. And they're like, oh man, so the only way to help our creative community is to put everyone in Cedar Falls, Iowa on a platform, right? And just help promote what they're doing and that it's the best in the world and whatnot. And that's basically just continuing this siloed thing. You're basically just pushing your bubble higher to the sky, if that's a right analogy.
That makes sense.
I think it makes sense for people to bring in people from other cities, from other walks of life, from other jobs, different crafts and perspectives to basically share with other people. So it'll shake something loose, man. It'll make someone uncomfortable and have to struggle with something. And I think that's when we start to get better.
The Perspective Podcast is fuel for your mind and creative grind. Each week, my guests and I provide the skills for thinking bigger, overcoming adversity, and making an impact with your work. What's going on today? I'm kicking it with my homie Joshua Horton, creative mastermind behind Creative Works Conference. Welcome to the Perspective Podcast, my brother. How are you doing today?
Good, man. Scotty, thanks for having me.
If you look up Josh Horton online, it is a juggler. It's a very famous juggler. So this isn't that Josh Horton. He's the famous guy in the creative field. Do you get that often? Do people give you shit for that?
I actually know Josh Horton, the juggler.
You do?
So I know him. There's a trick shot of me and him on my Instagram feed if you scroll long enough.
How did you link up with them? How?
So I own joshhorton.com, and a long time ago, like I don't know how many years it's been now, at least 5 years ago, he reached out and said, hey, would you be willing to sell me your domain? And I don't think the offer was high enough, so I said no. So we connected that way, and he comes into town and like juggles basketballs for the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
So when he comes into town, when he's close by, he'll hit me up and we'll go have lunch or something.
Wow. So random. And have you still sold it? Not sold it to him today?
No, I still have it. joshhorton.com. Yep.
All right. Biggest tip of the day. Go out and buy your own domain names of your names, everyone, if you haven't.
Sure.
All right. So for those who don't know and know you're not the juggler, give a brief Wikipedia page summary about yourself.
Sure. So I born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. I am living here now, trying to make a difference, not only in this community, but just creative community in general. My background is graphic design for the music industry, which led into branding for small businesses and nonprofits. And right now I'm full-time Creative Works org. So doing Creative Works full-time now. And we do a conference and skill camp and a few other things I'm sure we'll talk about.
For sure. We'll definitely get into that. So have you always been creative? Have you always been into design, or what got you into it and then led you into design in the music industry? Give some I'd love to hear some examples of some of the work that you used to do.
Right.
To wrap some context around that.
Yeah. So I won't give you my life story, but as a young person, I'll just say this. I basically had a very escapist mentality. I had a pretty rough childhood emotionally. And a lot of what I did was found myself losing time building Lego sets. And as I grew up, I would, draw the house that I wanted to live in. I would draw the system that I wanted in my car stereo, like the things that I couldn't make myself, I would like design them. And long story short, I went into the music industry as an engineer. I got a degree from Full Sail University in recording engineering. I did that for 2 years, and then I got into marketing because there was a gap in the organization I was working at the time. And I just took that job on. I knew how to code and knew how to work Photoshop and Illustrator, and that just kind of lent itself to doing, not only advertising work for the music industry, but then packaging. And then I hired Don Clark from Invisible Creature.
Yeah.
And the rest was my professional career basically is history after that. I mean, the rest was just, me spending time with him and his brother Ryan and the guys at Asterisk Studio. And
so you all worked together then?
Yeah.
How long did that go for?
Yeah, so I moved to Seattle in 2004. They started the company in 2000. It was called Asterisk Studio. It's misspelled, so if you go look it up today, don't type in asterisks. Uh, take the S off. But basically, we worked together for 3 years, and I moved back home in 2007, right as the music industry was being overtaken by things like Apple Music and Spotify and
So disruption.
MySpace. Yeah, exactly. So there wasn't any. We were doing album packages for like 30 grand, and then after that, it's like crickets and people wanting to work with like a $1,500 budget, and so both Don and I and Ryan basically just kind of found our own groove, if you will, after that. And I came home.
So when you came home, what was the next move from there?
So I freelanced. I worked with a nonprofit organization during the day, and I freelanced during the night. And I was able to, grow my income to a point that I was really comfortable with. And then I did that for a few years, and then went out on my own and started freelancing for small businesses and nonprofits.
Still doing like the whole Photoshop and Illustrator world of things, or more of the coding things? Like, what side were you leveraging? Because I'm sure there's way more potential with the coding aspect of stuff.
Man, I did all kinds of stuff. I mean, I hacked PHP websites on WordPress for a long time. I did a lot of Photoshop and advertising work, and I also built some brands and identities for local nonprofits, like using Illustrator and stuff. I was pretty well rounded in almost every area. I was dangerous, I would say, is the best way to put it, but I wasn't really. I didn't really shine in any area in particular.
So then, okay, let's pivot into this then. So I attended Creative Works back in 2017. Funny story, I saw the lineup go out, and then I saw the workshop lineup. Immediately it was Eric Marinovich and Ken Barber. I saw the prices for everything. Didn't even ask my wife. I just bought a ticket ASAP, booked everything right there, and then like one of those take action, ask for forgiveness later, don't ask
Right.
for permission. One of the best things I did, like in 2017, that was an absolute blast, and a lot of people that I've met there, like Grits, Eric Marinovich, Austin Dunbar, have all been
Yeah.
guests on this show and become good friends of mine. I would love to hear you explain more about where did the idea for Creative Works come from, and what is it today? And then eventually I want to talk a little bit about what you're trying to scale it to. What's the vision you have for it? So where did the concept come from? Where did it start?
Yeah. So a good friend of mine, Brandon Reich,
Is
he
that the
and
dude who
I,
did this design over
yeah,
here?
create
Cool. Create
change.
change.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So he and I have been friends for a long time, and he asked me to come up to go to this weapons of mass creation event with him
Mm.
and help him sell prints, basically. So he was gonna, be the person talking to everyone. He was gonna talk, and I think he spoke that year, and I basically helped him sell prints. And as I was looking over the experience, I was just reminded, honestly, of like how much creative community impacted me in general. Like moving to Seattle and being around not only Asterisk Studios, which then turned into a Visible Creature, but Tooth and Nail and Solid State Records. We did a lot of work for them. I actually worked for Tooth and Nail for a year out of their offices while I put work in the portfolio of Asterisk Studio. But I was just reminded how important creative community was in that moment, and how much these formats of like talks and workshops and markets really impacted young creatives. And so and I honestly, I met Mike Jones around the same time, who does Creative South.
Shout out to Mike Jones. Love him here.
Yeah, man. So I was just looking around, and Memphis, man, Memphis is a rough market. Memphis is middle of the country. There's no mountains. It's hot and humid in the summertime. We really like kind of rest our laurels on our history versus what's going on right now. And so I was trying to find a way basically to push the narrative forward here. And then also, I came back from Seattle in 2007. I had a ton of people that I thought were going to just skyrocket into fame and do all this work in Memphis. And that just didn't happen. And a lot of people were apathetic, kind of complacent in their work. And so I decided to kind of catalyze local creative community here in Memphis to start the conference in 2014. And so just on a whim, like right in the middle as I was going through this crazy divorce, like I was just like, you know what, right now, I've got to do something different, something that was a pleasant distraction. I was doing freelance work and branding during the day. And then I started just working on a conference lineup, and I was going to do a micro conference of like maybe 4 people talking. And that was it. And then before you know it, it was like, Don and Ryan Clark were the first ones to sign on, then Dana Tanamachi. And then I shot Aaron Draplin an email, and he's like, oh my God, barbecue. Yes. We're going to do this. And then just started filling the lineup with
those were your first 4 signups.
Yeah.
All keynote material.
Oh yeah, for sure.
As is right now.
Yeah. And a lot of it, honestly, I think, randomly, I think I was still living off of working with Invisible Creature. People that I was talking to at that time really knew me from that era, I guess, in my career. And so I had a lot of, built up, respect's not really the right word, but just I had the ability to make those phone calls and people take me seriously.
It's clout.
Yeah, clout. There you go.
Yeah.
So I had that going for me. And so, yeah, like there was like 4 people in the lineup. And then before you know it, like things just got out of hand. It was like, I think the first year was like maybe, 12 to 16 speakers. We had a tiny market. And then, I just tried to give everything I could to the folks that came to the conference. We made money on the first year, but it was, not much at all. But the impact that we were making and just the excitement that we were drumming up here locally. And then also what was crazy is like the first year we had people flying in from all over the country to attend the event.
Well, with those 4 keynotes, you got to expect that for sure.
Sure.
And this was 2014.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Was the first year. Okay.
Yeah.
How many people were at the first one?
175. And we sold out, I think, in 2 months.
Nice. Were you doing workshops then too?
We didn't have workshops at the moment. We really didn't have, again, it just wasn't the intention. And so we started selling tickets. I thought about doing workshops, and I thought it was a little bit too late to launch those. Now, I could have launched them, but I just didn't have that the first go round for sure.
Yeah. What was the biggest thing you learned? Eventually I want to talk about, because I'm not going to lie, having the clout through the podcast, that sounds weird to say, and going to all these other conferences, eventually I want to build something in Iowa, and I want to pick your brain live here in a little bit, but I'm just kind of planting that seed for those later who want to know, how do they start a conference despite competition and everything. But what was the one thing you learned that year that you built off of? Did you do it all solo? Did you have a team your first year?
So there was another person who was kind of working with me in my office, Lauren Ray Holterman, who was helping me out logistically. And she and I had collaborated on a couple of projects here locally. And so her and I basically spearheaded the first year. I curate like all of pretty much the entire thing, from the market to the speakers to the workshops, all that stuff. And then I had a group of volunteers to step up that year. And then every year since, basically a core group of volunteers that really help make things happen, the few days before and the days of and the days after, to, help it continue to keep going. So
where do you come up with the themes? Because you're wearing the shirt right now from the year I was there, Creatives Are Dangerous. And that was Jenna Blazevich for those.
Yeah.
Where does the themes come up each year, and what's the intention behind it? Like, let's talk about this year, 2019. What can people expect? Why should anyone care? Right.
Because I care, and because everyone who's there cares, and I think that's the one thing that, to back up, the themes every year are just things that are just going through my head that I'm driving on. I'm having conversations with young creatives, and I'm helping them understand like their place in the world, how to work hard and develop their craft, help them kind of reset them. Because I feel like they're, with Instagram, obviously, and Dribble, and everyone showing their best work and not showing the failures, I think it's really hard for people to exist and feel like they're on the right track, right? I mean, you talk about this all the time.
Comparison trap, for sure.
That's right. So the first year was commit to craft, and I felt like it was really important to me. I was seeing a lot of people just trying to rise up to fame without doing the work. And everyone that I loved and respected at that moment had just, head down for 10 years doing some of the best work of their lives, and were just then being recognized for the thing that they were passionate about, right? Second year was create together, and that just spoke about the importance of like a copywriter and a designer working together, or a filmmaker and a typographer working on film titles, or an illustrator working with a graphic design team to basically build a brand, right? So create together was that year. Oh man, I can't think of all of these. That was 2015. 2016, I think, was build with conviction, right? So that's another thing, is that the folks that come, that are part of our community, basically, they have a deep-seated belief that their work matters and that they can make a difference. And so, basically trying to help tap into people who actually care about the work that they do, and that actually know that they have the power to change the world around them. So build with conviction. Then creatives are dangerous. I just think that creative people, I mean, they lead so often with telling narratives, trying to help everyone else kind of shape the world around them by the stories that they write, by the graphics that they put together. And so there's a lot of power in that to change, history, if you will, on a larger scale. Then what was last year?
Undeniable. That was
Yeah,
Mark Panesso and
undeniable.
Bob
Yeah.
Ewing.
So I just felt like, I deal with a lot of self-doubt, insecurities, whatever, like we all do. But I felt like at some point, with all the obstacles that were being thrown at me, like the work that I'm doing is completely undeniable. Like we're doing it for the right reasons. We're doing it for everyone, not just some. And, there can be people that are, hating or cynical or critical. But at the end of the day, at this point, at least with the work that I'm doing, and people that are working really hard, it's like the people that are on the sidelines just trying to, stir shit up, basically, they're going to look like fools. And so I just want to help encourage people and help them understand that their efforts, their craft, their time, that's undeniable, and leading towards the goal that they want to create in their life.
I feel like each one of these conferences with the themes is just like a takeaway point right now for people listening.
For sure.
Which is dope.
And this year it's driven to create, which is something that I was trying to figure out, like why I was different, why the people in our community were different from other communities. And I don't just stay here in Memphis. I travel the country and am part of different communities and try to really plug in and try to figure out like how to get better at what I'm doing. And one of the things that I started to notice about our community in general is that these people don't clock in at 9 and clock out at 5. Like these people are going home and working, and they're getting better at what they're doing. They're not just resting on the laurels or doing the same thing over and over again.
That's everyone listening to this podcast right now.
Yeah,
exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's just important that people understand that, like, hey, you're not alone. Like we're all like this, right? And so that's the power of a conference. You sit down in a room with 350, 400 people, and you look around and you're like, oh shit, everyone's just like me. We're all struggling with the same things, and we all care about what we're doing. And and we have people show up at the conference from time to time that are just all about fame, or they're all about their social media, or they're all about presenting themselves as a creative, but not necessarily desiring to do the work or learn and get better. And those people, I think, over time just kind of naturally weed themselves out of our community, and it just makes our community stronger, right? We keep on saying things from the stage and saying things out loud that basically that make people uncomfortable, and I think that that's a good thing. And we want to wrestle with that uncomfortableness, like that, these ideas that we're not good enough, that we don't have a certain skill set, and then encourage people to kind of like lean into that uncomfortableness and learn from that and grow from that. And I hope I'm a lifelong student, and anyone that I love and respect at this moment, they're a lifelong student too. And so anyway, I just think it's really important that it's really powerful, is what I'll say, is when you get people who believe all of those same things in the room together.
So let's do a little plug of who are the people that you can expect this year at 2019, Driven to Create.
Yeah,
hype
absolutely.
some people up right here. Here's your plug right now. Plug it up.
Right, for the conference?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this year, Driven to Create. We've got a really great lineup. I pulled it up right next to me because I'm always feeling like I'm going to leave some names out. But we're leading off every night. We have what I call the keynote speaker, and it's just people that are incredibly inspiring and have a huge audience and are saying a lot of things and feel really passionate about the work they do. So David Carson,
drop the dates real quick.
Yep, October 3rd through 5th in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay, and that's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
So
you're talking about Thursday during the day and evening.
Yep.
Is what you're hyping. Okay.
Yep. So we got David Carson, which if anyone knows David Carson, when I was, basically getting a degree in graphic design in the early 2000s, a lot of the work that I did emulated a lot of the work that he was doing. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned from him lately is just to ignore the grid and to try and express and be more expressive and more related to elements in composition and type. And I just think that that's really great. And I think he does a really good job. I just saw him at Dribble Hang Time in New York City in nice. June, and his keynote, fantastic. And I met him. He's a super nice guy. Lisa Congdon, I think you know her.
I'm putting it in the universe. I need to get her on her show. I'm so looking forward to connecting with her at Creative Works. Like, I'm so stoked. That was like one of the names.
Yeah,
I need to get to know her.
Yeah, I know, and I can't wait to hear her story from her. But I love the work that she's doing. She's so inspirational. I just love. I love getting to know new people through this process of hey, would you like to come to my conference? Hey, would you like to sell in the market? I mean, it's just funny how people interact, and she's just been incredibly responsive and excited about it. I think she's got a new book coming out too that she'll have. Ty Matson, someone that I've been watching for a long time. My buddy Matt Lehman, worked with him a long time ago on a few projects and been trying to get Ty here for a long time. Mina Markham, who I had at Creative Works One Day Seattle. She's a Slack engineer. She's really fantastic. Worked on the Hillary Clinton campaign, working out design systems for the web. Day Hogue, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Friend of the podcast.
Tina Essmaker. Yeah. Tina Essmaker, who I've been following for such a long time with the Great Discontent. She's doing a new thing and coaching and things like that. So I'm excited for her to share her story. Adam Garcia, Maggie Interios. So I should know that before I get on stage and introduce her. She's amazing.
She's a beast, dude. And she is so wickedly smart. Like, that was one of the most top listened to episodes because she just cracked it open and talked about pricing, pitching, what else? Contracts, everything you could think of that people don't like to talk about. I think that was episode 116. But man, she's something special, man. And she's teaching a workshop.
For sure. And she's doing the workshop on Procreate. So she does, I think everything she does right now is digital. Yeah. And she just she works in Procreate with Apple Pencil and iPad Pro. So she's going to be helping to distill a lot of that for people who are trying to leave their desktop or their mouse and start working using Apple Pencil in that format and using that work to not only just sketch but also use it for client work.
I'll be taking that workshop, by the way, too. If anybody, I'll be taking that workshop, by the way, and a day Hogues. So get your workshops, come hang.
Yeah, so I've got some folks coming from CNN Digital in London who I'm just really, I'm really smitten these days when people are trying to tell stories through graphics. They do a lot of animation and graphics, so telling stories through that. Dan Jansen from Lincoln Design Company. He was also in Seattle, just one of the nicest guys, but the work that him and his crew do, it's incredible. And they're going to be fleshing out the rest of our the art for our conference this year.
Did they start it? Are they the ones who did the designs this year?
They did the type, yeah.
Okay, cool. I didn't know that.
There's a lot more to go along with it too. We just haven't launched it.
I can't wait. And the animation that Sasan on their team is probably going to do with it is going to be next level too.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've been watching them for a long time, and the splash page that I don't even know if it still exists, but the splash page where they just go through all the Lincoln logos and one animates into the next one. It's insane. So yeah, I've got Raji King, Alicia Colon, Kristen Carter from Busy Beaver Button Company. I've got someone from Studio Number One, Thomas Wimberly. Do you know who that is?
I don't, but I will.
So I've been trying to get Shepard Fairey to the conference for a long time. that doesn't really work out. There's a
No.
ceiling on who I can get. So Thomas was really kind and responsive and got back to me. So I'm excited about that. Yeah, it's just going to be a fantastic 2019. There's more. Just check out our website, creativeworks.co/conference, and you can check out more about our lineup this year.
Well, and I had to give you an absolute massive public thank you. One of the things that scared me the most that I wrote down at the list of goals this year was to do a live podcast someday. Wasn't expecting this year, especially with the little one in the picture, but
Yeah,
you hit me up and like I about shit a brick and literally was like, oh my God, I need to think about this. But back when I got my first speaking opportunity, I almost said no to that, and that changed everything. So like this is definitely one of the things that, you know, it's an excited scare, you know, lean into the discomfort as you were just talking about a little bit ago. And so thank you. Thank you so
you're
much.
more than
Like,
welcome,
man, I
dude.
can't wait to rip it and bring up some of the friends on the stage of the podcast and, you know, just melt faces with value. Like I'm so stoked to be back in Memphis eating barbecue. Yes.
Yeah.
Again, that's it.
I think we have some I think between your audience and your passion, your values, and my audience and passion and values, there's so much synergy there. I mean,
Dude,
I think
it's going to align a lot.
Yeah, man. And so I just think that it only makes sense for you to be up there. I mean, at the moment, we don't have anything coming out weekly. You've got touches weekly that you're building on. And I just think that that's really fantastic. So I want to help plug our audience and our community into things that are going year round so they can stay connected to really connected to why they started doing this in the first place.
Well, and it's and Creative Works is a nice little spot too, because man, if you've been in the conference scene, you know there's something at this time, there's something at this time, there's something at this time, and you kind of have your own little world built up in that October zone.
Yeah.
Speaking of, what is the hardest part about organizing and running a conference? I want to get into like those questions because this is what, you know, I'm eventually trying to work towards in the next couple of years to leverage those relations. What's the hardest part?
Well, I think it's different for everyone. I don't think that you would struggle with the same things that I struggle with, but the hardest thing for me is, so one of the things that people don't know about Creative Works at the moment is it's an employee of one. I'm the only person that's working on Creative Works at the moment, and I hire people every now and again to fill in some gaps for copywriting and maybe some social media stuff. And then I have some folks here on the ground in Memphis that help me with a few things logistically leading up to the conference. But I think the biggest hurdle that we have at the moment, the hardest thing that's for me to do is to really tell the story, right? And to market ourselves better. It seems like that's one of my biggest values is story and storytelling. But for whatever reason, my personality doesn't lend itself to telling the story very well of what we do. So you get it and I get it, but there are a lot of people still who have yet to be introduced to Creative Works community, a Creative Works conference or a skill camp or things like that. So I'm learning that as time goes on, I have to do a better job of, you know, putting together social media and strategy and marketing around that and having more email touches and stuff. And, you know, one person can't do it all. So, you know, the hardest thing for me is really that. I mean, it's everything else seems to come pretty naturally to me. Making connections, emailing people back and forth. You know, I book travel. You know, I do a lot of like venue scouting and locations and stuff like that, which hopefully at one point more people will take on. But yeah, I think that's my biggest challenge is helping to spread the word about what we do. That's probably not the best answer because I think you're really good at that. So
I mean,
think you got that down.
That's hard enough in itself. What about like the delegation standpoint or getting people to help? Has it always been just a one-man show or like in the past nonprofit wise and now it's full time?
Yeah, 3 years ago now, or 2 years ago, we were a nonprofit for 2 years. And we were getting local funding in Memphis, and that went away for reasons that, you know, we weren't at fault at. Basically, just the funding landscape changed here pretty drastically. And so at that time, I had a team of 3 people, which were fantastic, could help me fill in the gaps. We were doing a boot camp here locally to encourage design education outside of high school and college. We were doing monthly meetups and events. So if you go to creativeworks.co/events, you can see all the stuff that we were doing I think in 2018 and 2017 is what's on the site now. But yeah, at one point I had the money to hire a staff, but now it's just me, and really it's trying to pivot it into a more, this is the wrong word, but just lucrative business model to where I can build the resources back to get a team and help us reach more people. I mean, I think that's really what it is. Hardest thing for me.
Lucrative could be win-win. You're providing all this value at the same time. Like it benefits you at the same time too.
Absolutely. I think too, I struggle with vision. So, and I don't, by struggling with it, I mean, like I have a huge vision, but I struggle, I think at times to like scale it back to what's possible. I think it's the thing that keeps driving me forward, but it's also the thing that I feel held back the most by. And so that, the piece of increasing revenue really just will help us get some of that stuff back. So
what about in terms of like rejection of people who decide not to come that you reach out to, like Shepherd Ferry or something like that? How easy is it to just get a contact with someone, leverage those relationships, but like what happens when people say no?
yeah, I mean, that happens all the time.
Because I've had to learn to deal with rejection. I grew up with that chunky fat kid who got rejected with everything.
Sure.
So that's still hard for me to deal with these days.
Yeah, I mean, that happens all the time. I'll even court someone for a number of months and then all of a sudden, they pull out or they're not able to do it again. And, I try not to I don't get my feelings hurt about it. I mean, Shepherd, I've reached out to Shepherd, through the whatever contact form I can find, right? I'm sure he gets, thousands of those things. But I've even gone through other people. And I've known, I mean, I think the other thing I think is I've known famous people before, and even if you're friends with them, you just basically have to approach contacting them in a very you can't have too many expectations, and you also can't expect too much, right? So you have to kind of, even if you know the person, like I have friends that are, a big deal, and it's hard for me to communicate with them at times. So I try not to take it personally, and I just stay persistent, and I try to make sure that I'm telling people more about the why than, hey, I've got, $500, a plane ticket, and 3 nights in a hotel, right? That's the
where
nuts and bolts
the
of it.
story and the why and
That's
the
right.
power of the community and
Yeah.
everything comes in, right?
Yeah. And I think that's when people, I think what the next thing they do is they hop on the website and they're like, who's everyone else that's coming to the conference? And, I think at a certain point, our lineups every year are fairly strong, diverse, and inclusive. And so they get a picture of what our values are in that. And they also just see people that they want to hang out with. So, Kim Barber's at the conference this year. And so you got a number of people who just want to hop on that lineup and be a part of that. And so that helps too. But there are a lot of different things that go into, securing a lineup for a conference. And this year in particular, I've already talked with a few people about that. It's like almost all of my bigger asks for the past few years, kind of responded to me this year. And so I added a couple people last minute that basically messed up my schedule. And now I've got to work to figure out how to I said yes to too many people basically. So now I got to figure out the best way to make sure that we don't exhaust people on the main stage, each year. So
yeah, one thing you also do a great job is that the diversity aspect too. A lot of white dudes with beards like me isn't always going to be the best fit for something. So I do appreciate why it makes it harder sometimes for me to get out there. At the same time, I'd rather go to a place that is focused on diversity and hitting a broader spectrum of interests of things. That's something I think is commendable too, because I think you actually get recognition for doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, every year we get a lot of people taking up for us online. Someone will launch a lineup and it's like all white dudes. And then they're like, but Creative Works has been doing it like this forever, or doing it, been inclusive and diverse forever. And I'm like, dude, thank you for saying that. I didn't pay these people to say this. But it's just, I think that here's the thing, man. When you're operating in a silo or in a bubble, you're not getting any better, right? So why not bring together every single person in every walk of life you can to help us all get better together? Because what serves the greater number of people actually ends up helping everyone else out in the end, in my belief. So It may not work for client work because you're trying to distill what's unique about that client, but at least getting better together and hearing different perspectives, right? Like here's one of the things I think is a mistake about local communities. So I think a lot of people, live in, Cedar Falls, Iowa, right? That aren't you. And they're like, oh man, so the only way to help our creative community is to put everyone in Cedar Falls, Iowa on a platform, right? And just help promote what they're doing and that it's the best in the world and whatnot. And that's basically just continuing this siloed thing. You're basically just pushing your bubble higher to the sky, if that's a right analogy.
That makes sense.
I think it makes sense for people to bring in people from other cities, from other walks of life, from other jobs, different crafts, and perspectives to basically share with other people. So it'll shake something loose, man. It'll make someone uncomfortable and have to struggle with something. And I think that's when we start to get better.
Yeah. Hence Perspective Podcast for a reason, for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
No, I love it. And we've chatted before. So like, where do you see this evolving? You talk about your vision. All right. So what are these dreams that are so big, they scare you, make you uncomfortable, yet you still have to stay, realistic in the short term, but you're playing the long game of crazy dreams. So like say next 5 years, what do you foresee Creative Works being?
So I want the conference to continue to grow.
Because it's more than just a conference is what you have told me.
That's right. So if you've been paying attention to us, literally within the last few months, we've done a thing called Skill Camp, which is, I think it's important. So I'll tell you the why, and then I'll tell you what we did about it. So we were having this conference, and it was basically like one big, Tony Robbins event, right? People were like leaving thinking that, they're completely on fire and just like super inspired. And we did a survey, and it's like, how would this impact you professionally? And it's like, our professional numbers were getting pretty low. People were affected personally and not professionally. And so I wanted to address that because I don't like being fluff. I don't like staying in the clouds with you. I want to find a way to get tactile and really help change people's, their ability to get great work and help them to be more of a success so that they can be happier, have more money, those things that, we all struggle with in creative careers. And so we did this thing where I wanted to basically do an extended workshop with a few people, the best in the business, focused on spending time one-on-one with people, and also with another, community of participants in those workshops. So you build like real life accountability, right? So we can all go to Skillshare and learn new things, but where do you get the accountability and the peer pressure and the healthy things that help you get better? And I think that happens in person. So I've really doubled down on this in person or in real life kind of focus of the work that we do. And so we built this thing called Skill Camp, and we had Aaron Draplin and Amy and Jen Hood and Erica Garochow and Mary Kate McDevitt and DK&G, and which, in my opinion, are some of the best in the business at what they do. And they were spending 16 hours with, a group of 30 students. And, the feedback that we got after that event was just as impactful as the conference events that we've been doing for, it'll be 6 years this year. And so that's one of the things that we're going to continue to do is Skill Camp. We're going to find better and different ways to help address, the lack of skill development that happens outside of college or school, right? A lot of people want to pivot their careers, right? And so where do you go learn that stuff? Are you going to get online and watch some classes? Great. You can do that, and I think that's fantastic. Especially if you live out in the middle of nowhere, it's fantastic. But at least you can start to build, because of the internet, you can build in real life relationships that you continue online afterwards, that I think are really, those are the things that are transformative, right? So I want to be, as a person, I want to build transformative experiences for creative people. If I'm not building transformative experiences, we're basically all just doing the same thing, and we're just, we're not getting any better. And so you'll also noticed in May, we did a thing called Creative Works One Day, which is basically our opportunity to wrangle the people in those communities. So we did it in Seattle. So we had a number of people coming from Seattle every year to the conference. I wanted to meet them where they were, encourage their community. And when we had that event, it was a micro conference, basically like a 1-day thing. And we were hearing the same feedback. And I was shocked because I lived in Seattle for 3 years. I thought Seattle had it figured out. And then you go up to Seattle and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this just happened. This was such an incredible event. You guys were so good at what you do, so gracious. And the words that I heard from the stage and the connections that I met, like it's like, it's like design Twitter explodes in real life and everyone's getting to like
good design Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's design Twitter in real life. And so we're doing that. And so I hope over the next 5 years that we can continue to grow the experiences that we've gotten, grow them in ways that help them be, business wise, we need to grow them to be more profitable. Reach wise, we need to reach a larger audience and plug them into those experiences. But I want to grow these communities where they live. And I want to make sure that we have an in real life touch for them on a regular basis, and then really strong ways for them to interact outside of the in real life. And, for years, I've been trying to mentor people and help connect them to opportunities. And I want to start meeting people in their communities and start doing that more intentionally. And then we also we're working on a few, fun things that like will help engage people, help people with an identity crisis. How many times have you gone to, you probably talk about this all the time, but you go to, Christmas and someone's like, what do you do for a living? And you're like,
it's taken me like my 5th year of running Perspective Collective to finally at this moment in time, I can tell what people I do.
Exactly.
That's been so hard for me.
I know. And so, man, if we could all find, to be honest, I'm right there with you, man. I've been doing this. This will be my 6th year and I still can't articulate what I do very well.
Elevator pitch.
Do what?
Get those elevator pitches knocked out.
I know, right? Like we all have to be working on that. But I want to help. Not only inspire and connect and resource creative professionals and really like empower a creative workforce, but really help give them identity and help give them the resources that they need to be more successful. So, and all of that stuff needs to happen in ways that are that grow. We will never start devaluing in-person community, but we need to find ways digitally to reach people. And I think that's what you'll see us do in the next couple of years for sure.
That's dope, man. I'm happy to be a part of, small little cog in the greater vision. Before we go to rapid fire, real quick, what's one piece of advice you'd give to yourself when you were just starting off? Maybe you're just struggling at that point or you can't get your feet under you.
Yeah, just don't. People say this to me all the time, and it's the number one piece of feedback I get from people, not just what I would say to myself. And it's still hard, but just don't be so hard on myself. Don't be so hard on yourself is the biggest thing. I have if I've taken numerous personality tests, and one of the things that I struggle with is perfection. I'm always trying to impress or make someone around me. I'm trying to get someone to value me and to not only value me, but articulate that in some way that helps me feel okay. And so, and that's obviously incredibly toxic. So if anyone out there is dealing with that kind of thing, like that's just something you need to work on. It's a thing I think a lot of creative people struggle because we're putting things into the world. We want people to not only like what we put into the world, but to like us as the maker of those things, right? And so I think if I had to, go talk to I think it comes back to my childhood. If I could talk to my 13-year-old self and the things that I was trying to do at 13 and the things that I wanted to do when I was 19. At one point I was working in surgery, holding human hearts while they were being bypassed because I thought the only way for someone to value me was to be a doctor or a surgeon. And I know that's
saving lives.
Yeah, like that's the only way. How uncreative is that, Pat? Right? It's like A plus B equals C, or 1 + 1 = 2. And I'm so thankful at this point that I've chosen the career path that I have, because without that, I don't think that I would. This seems some dramatic, but like I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be talking to you. I have no idea what my spirit would be like at this moment. And over time, I've learned to like embrace who I am versus run away from it. And I think that that's the thing that if I could go back and talk to myself when I was, 13 to 24, is really start to embrace who you are, the imperfections, and the things that you're driven to do. I think it's when we're running from those things that our life is not as harmonious, or we're not as happy. And the older you get, the more perspective. I turn 40 next month, so it's like the older you get, the more perspective you have in knowing what's really important. And so, incredibly grateful to be doing what I'm doing at the moment, and excited about what's to come. And I just think that we should all start being a little less hard on ourselves, because it's all a process. We're all learning. No matter, I have some really incredible friends, and just talking with them in the first 30 minutes and realizing how fucked up their lives are. Their life is like their jobs aren't working out the way you think they are. Their family's not working out the way that you think they are. And regardless of whether they're on social media or not, like, your perception of other people's success is usually nowhere near the truth. And so, I have a lot of, like, I guess I get a lot of not energy, but a lot of peace in knowing that that this struggle that I'm going through is not unique. And again, I think that's the biggest reason to have creative community, is to get a lot of people in the room that are dealing with the same things, and so they can lean on each other, they can talk to each other, and and empower each other through their own experiences and stories and lessons learned.
That's awesome. All right, here's the most important question. All right, and it's rapid fire, but it doesn't have to be rapid. If you were on death row, Josh, what would your last slice of pizza be?
Oh man, it would be pepperoni pizza with jalapenos.
I'd mess with that. That sounds delicious. Anywhere specific?
Do what?
Anywhere specific?
Oh, the pizza place?
Yeah.
Yeah, Aldo's Pizza, man.
Aldo's. Okay, that's what Pretty Useful was just talking about.
Yeah. I mean, that rocked Memphis's world. We don't get good pizza here, and Aldo's shows up, and they've got a really great experience, but their pizza's fantastic. So that's like my wife and I's go-to for sure.
How close is that on that little strip?
It is, yeah. The main
street with, like, the train cart thing. Okay. I think I had that with Justin Mazel and Raji in 2017. Perfect. I'm going back there.
Yep.
Okay. Best barbecue spot in Memphis that you'd recommend for people, because there's gonna be listeners attending, and I'm gonna be going too.
I really like Central Barbecue. Really fantastic. Look up the branding on that. I think it's on Brand New blog or whatever. But Central Barbecue is by far my best. It's in my neighborhood. So is Aldo's. Aldo's is down the street from me as well. But we've got some barbecue stuff in store for folks at the conference. I don't want to let any of that experience out of the bag just yet, but we're going to have you guys handled.
You got us covered. Okay, perfect. So I don't got to go hunt for it like I did in 2017.
Nope.
I tried a lot of different places, man. Okay. If you could have lunch with one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh my God. This is a hard one.
First person that comes off the top of your head.
Man, it would be my dad.
Okay.
But when he was a kid.
Okay.
I don't. Yeah, we might cut this.
I think it's awesome, man. You're not scared to show your emotion. That's one thing I really dug about you at Creator Works in 2017. I even talked about it in the episode recap that I did a while back, man. Show your heart on your sleeve. It's dope.
Yeah, I've got two of them. If you know me, I've got two hearts on my sleeves. But yeah, I just I'll try to work through this, and sorry it gets so heavy, man. But
like, you can keep it short if you need to.
Yeah, man, my dad basically struggled with all the same shit that I struggled with growing up, but I don't think he found his community. I don't think he found his support. And so I think he chose a life that didn't bring him joy. And that had a huge effect on my life and my childhood, and my sister's life and her childhood. And, I wish that I could have I think I get a lot of my creativity from my dad, but he chose a job, like a 9 to 5 when he was 21 and just retired. So been doing the same thing for over 35, 40 plus years. And so, I wish that, I know that's a weird thing to say, but that's the first thing that came to mind. So I'm just being honest.
Damn, no, I actually really relate to that same situation with my dad. I don't feel like he's had the same opportunities as me and didn't find
Yeah.
that same outlet that I found, you know,
Yeah.
due to how he was raised and stuff. So I vibe to that a lot, man, especially when Brian, oh my
McDonald's.
gosh, no, Brian from Imagine Think, oh my God, he did a workshop. He works in Seattle Belief
Oh,
Agency.
yeah. Jesse Bryan.
Jesse Bryan, yeah, he
Yeah.
he talked a couple years ago, and man, he like got me all emotional and shit when he
Yeah.
was like talking about like your parents and stuff, and that put me through like the same scenario
Yeah.
with my dad. Man, I broke down talking to Jesse later that night. I'm like, oh my God, really struck the chord on that one. But
Man,
no,
and I think what's really interesting is so many of my friends have uh, the same struggles. Childhood. They're basically, the gist is their childhood was not the best thing. I mean, for different people, it was different things, but they didn't have a really great childhood, and so they spent their teen years through their 20s running from that. And in the midst of that, some of us grab our own power, if you will, to change that and get
mhm.
creative. And we were fortunate enough to either be given an opportunity or lean into that. And I think it's been our salvation. I know that's a super heavy way to put it, but I can't imagine what I would be doing right now if I couldn't have had the story that I have.
For
So
sure, man. That's your most powerful asset. So, real quick, last question: where can people go to follow you online, support you, and buy those damn tickets?
yeah, man. So you can follow me online personally, Future Josh, or at Future Josh, most places. And then creativeworks.co is where you can find every information about the events that we have had and are having in the future, and buy those conference passes and workshop tickets.
Josh, thank you so much for just opening up, dropping a lot of value, not holding back. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity you jumping on, the opportunity you're giving me at Creative Works. I'm just happy to be a part of the family, man. So I can speak for everyone that we appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you too. Thank you.
No problem. We'll be in touch. Thanks again for listening. It'd be awesome if you took the time to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and let the comment below so we can connect. Again, if you want to catch a shout out as a future listener of the week, make sure you subscribe to the show on iTunes and give it a rating and review.